Hi and welcome to WEH Videos. My name is Skip and today I want to give you more tips on how to fly your airplane. But first I want to suggest that you do some reading on how an airplane flies. Get to know the different parts of the airplane. What is an aileron, vertical stabilizer, a rudder? How does trimming work? And why is leaning the mixture necessary? When do I need to do that? Get to know your airplane. So assuming you know these basic things, today I want to show you how to fly straight and level. Now this may not sound like a lot of fun, but if you can learn to land, to take off smoothly, and to fly straight and level manually, you will really get an understanding how much fun flying really is, and also how difficult it can be if you don't know what to do. So learn to fly and maintain a specific altitude, plus or minus 100 feet, a speed, plus or minus 10 knots, and a heading, plus and minus 2 degrees. Now to practice this, I suggest you set your weather conditions. So go up here to Environment Weather, click on Set Weather to uniformly for the whole world. Down here you can set the visibility, and over here you set winds. Now I have them all set to zeros here for this tutorial, so we don't have to worry about the weather affecting us here. So this is a good way to learn how to do these. After you get pretty good at this, you can go over and grab real weather from the net. That's a nice way to fly. But for now, we're just going to have everything set where we have virtually no weather to worry about. So here is a very, very important tip. Don't stare at your instruments. Look outside. I know in a simulator this isn't a big deal, but in the real world it's mandatory. Your life depends on it. There was a day when I was flying with my instructor, and we were here in the Bay Area, and we were over in this part of the bay, flying back across the bay to San Carlos Airport. You can see that there's airports all over the place. Here's San Carlos down here, Palo Alto, Hayward, Oakland. And actually in the simulator here you see this line, this flight line for this airplane. This is what happened to us. We were flying across the bay this way, and there was another airplane, a twin engine, coming this way. I did not see it. My instructor yelled airplane, took control, and made a right turn. This twin engine crossed right in front of us and pretty much at the same altitude. Had my instructor not made that move, we most likely would have collided. The other airplane did nothing. I don't think they saw us. I'll never forget that. Now it wasn't a critically close encounter. My instructor caught it in plenty of time, so nothing was reported, but it certainly got my attention. So keep your eyes outside. Only look at your gauges occasionally. You want to look at them regularly, on a regular basis, but don't get fixated on your instrument panel. Keep your eyes outside. So, how do we fly straight and level, keeping our eyes outside the airplane? Well, that is actually pretty easy. Right now I'm on autopilot just so I can explain this to you, but we will go to manual. So here we are flying. We're at 5,000 feet. We're heading of 340 and a speed of 100 and what is that? 110 knots, 105 knots, we'll call that. An easy way to do this is we pick a landmark out in front of us. Now here's a nice little mountain peak here. If we go manual and keep that mountain peak right there in relationship to our sun shield here, we'll be flying straight and level. So let's just give that a try. Alright. Now we need to trim the airplane. So I got to play with the trim wheels here. We got aileron trim, which is your left and right. And now I have completely let go of the yoke, and we're flying straight towards that face. As long as we keep that mountain right there, don't let it go up or down, we will maintain altitude. And this is quite simple. You don't need to be staring at your instruments. Alright, I'm sorry, this video is going to be a little jerky because I have to start and stop a couple of times. So it's going to look like I've made 5 or 6 of these videos. I'm sorry for that. But back to this, you don't need to be staring at your instruments. As long as this mountain is in that same position in the windshield, and you'll be able to maintain your altitude and your course. Now we're up to 5,050 feet, so we're just going to descend just a little bit here. So we're just going to nudge the yoke a little bit forward, and it's starting to get to the right a bit, so we'll make a little bit of a left turn and correct. And this is all it takes. Now we're climbing and climbing, so I think I'll trim a little bit and bring that down. And that's all there is to it. We're just going to fly right along and keep that there. Now we can look outside, we can look around and make sure we're doing all right. We always come back to see that we're in that spot. Now one thing about the characteristics of an airplane, if you're constantly trying to keep it on course and at altitude, as soon as you get a little high or a little low, or your instruments change, especially your vertical speed, that one can really confuse you. You think, oh my gosh, I got to pull back. That's not true. The way airplanes fly is really pretty simple. If you set it up, if I were to let go of this yoke right now, this plane would, maybe it would start to dive a little bit or start to descend. But as it descends, it'll pick up speed. As it picks up speed, the wings will give it more lift and it'll start to climb. Then as it climbs, it'll lose speed, and then it'll start to fall. And then it'll climb, and then it'll fall. And it will oscillate like this for quite a while. But if you never touch the controls, if you just get it, if you're at a safe altitude, and like today when there is no wind or anything, we could set this up and it would fly perfectly. Now it may not fly on course, but it'll oscillate until it finds the perfect sweet spot for the airplane, and it will stay there. The only thing that will make a difference would be changes in the air, maybe some winds or some heat coming up off the ground. One thing I noticed on that day we were flying across the bay, the day we almost collided, was that air temperature over the water is the same. There is a very even temperature rising from the surface. So it's incredibly smooth over water. And I was able to set that airplane up coming across the bay. Once I got it trimmed, I flew for 5 miles across that bay and never ever had to adjust for the altitude. Over ground, you get thermals, you get heat, different heat coming up off the ground. And so that can really affect how you fly. But now notice, we're flying. I've got that little mountain here right in the very same spot. My altitude hasn't changed hardly at all. My speed a couple of knots faster, but certainly not 10 knots. I'm about 107 knots, well, I've gone up 5 knots. And I'm just flying along. This is quite simple. So I suggest you practice this. This is a nice way to learn to fly, getting straight and level and doing it manually. It's really a lot of fun. It's more of a challenge than just turning on that stupid GPS and then finding yourself at your location. This way you can fly, you can look around, you don't have to panic. You can always get back to that spot. And well, it's hard to do in the simulator, but in real life there's usually some marks on the windshield, and you can find a little dot or a scratch and set that up on a spot, and boy, you can be right on the money. Alright, so let's do a little review here. Remember to keep your eyes outside. Scan your instruments on a regular basis, but don't get fixated on them. So you want to put the horizon in the middle of your windshield and pick a target to fly to. Now we're going to have to move this target, as you can see here. If we just kept that right there all the time, we'd fly right into the ground. So as long as we're at altitude and that target is right there, that's fine. But we're going to have to pick another one out here in the distance to keep flying to keep our heading. Don't chase the vertical speed. This is hard not to do because it seems like you're really off when you're not. This will always lag just a little bit. So this is the one instrument I think that confuses me the most. I think, oh my gosh, I'm in a dive when I'm only, dropping 20 feet a minute or something like that. So don't chase the vertical speed. Let the airplane settle out. It's going to oscillate a bit. If it doesn't level out and smooth out in the place you want it, make some minor corrections. Add a little bit of power to bring you up to altitude, and then give the airplane a chance to settle out with that new power setting. So there you have it. That's my lesson on flying straight and level manually. If you like this, please click the like button. If you would like to leave a comment or send me a message, that would be great. And thank you again so much for watching, and God bless.